Dean Martin was singing Everybody Loves Somebody, fifth verse, third note. 5,000 people held their breath. And wait right here, because Dean's voice cracked, not for a full second, half a second. The orchestra kept going, but Dean started to stop. His eyes locked onto a man at stage left. The man shook his head, twice, slowly, and Dean Martin's face took on an expression so devastating that a woman in the front row would later say, it looked like his soul left his body. The microphone hit the floor. The metallic clang filled the room. Dean turned and walked. Backstage, the audience applauded. But backstage, Dean Martin's life had just ended. His son Dean Paul was dead, and from that moment forward, Dean Martin was never the same man again. Write in the comments, where are you listening to this story from, and what time is it right now? To understand what broke Dean Martin that night, you need to understand who Dean Paul Martin was. Born November 17, 1951, Dean Paul, Dino as his father called him, was everything his father hoped he'd be. A nationally ranked tennis player by 16, waking at dawn to practice serves until his hands bled. Dean would watch from the kitchen window, coffee in hand, pride swelling in his chest. A musician whose group Dino, Desi, and Billy hit number 17 on Billboard with I'm a Fool in 1965. Dean Paul was 19, calling his father after shows, breathless, electric with excitement. Dean would sit in his study with a drink and that quiet smile, listening to his son describe the screaming crowds, the rush of applause, an actor who appeared in films and television, and most remarkably a captain in the California Air National Guard, flying F-4 Phantom fighter jets, the kind that break the sound barrier and tear through clouds at speeds that make your chest compress. Dean Martin begged him not to fly. Actually begged. This man who never begged anyone for anything, who'd built an empire on never needing anyone, got down on one knee in his living room and said, Dino, please, do something else, anything else. But Dean Paul smiled that same easy smile his father had made famous, the one that said everything would be fine. Dad, I have to do this. You taught me to do what I love. And Dean Martin, the man who always had the perfect comeback, the smooth line, the charm to talk his way through anything, had no response to that. So he watched his son log hundreds of hours in the cockpit, held his breath during every single flight, and answered the phone on the first ring every time Dean Paul called to say he'd landed safely. The relief in Dean's voice was always there, just a little, just enough for his son to hear it and smile. Dean Martin rarely showed emotion in public. He built a 40-year career on being cool, unshakable. Back in the Rat Pack days with Frank and Sammy, Dean was the one who never broke. The booze on stage, usually apple juice, the stumbling, choreographed. Dean Martin, the performer, was an illusion. Dean Martin, the father, was real. And notice this, because everyone who knew Dean understood it, Dean Paul was his favorite. Not in a way that hurt his other children, but in a way no one could miss. Dean would cancel shows to watch tennis matches. He'd sit in the back of clubs where Dean Paul performed, grinning. When Dean Paul joined the Guard, Dean was terrified and proud at once. That's my boy, he'd say, voice cracking. Flying jets, can you believe it? March 21st, 1987, a Saturday, clear skies. Dean Paul woke early, made coffee, called his father. They talked about weather, a game, tour dates. Be careful up there, Dean said. Always am, Dad, Dean Paul replied. Last conversation. 2 men, 1 phone, neither knowing what was coming in the next 8 hours. Dean Paul took off at 3:30 p.m. for a routine training mission over the San Bernardino Mountains. He'd flown this route dozens of times. He had over 500 hours in that F-4 Phantom. He was an exceptional pilot, but at 3:45 p.m., 15 minutes after takeoff, his jet disappeared from radar. Gone. Air traffic control called. Radio silence. By 4:30 p.m., wreckage was spotted on a mountainside. Catastrophic impact. No survivors. Dean Paul Martin was 35 years old. Dean Martin was 300 miles away preparing for a show. His manager got the call at 5:15 p.m., tried to reach Dean, but Dean was in the wings warming up. The stage manager intercepted the manager. What do we do? Tell him now? The show starts in 45 minutes. They made a decision. Let him perform. Tell him after. Wrong decision. But they didn't know how to tell a father his son was dead. So they gave Dean 1 more hour. 1 hour of not knowing. 1 hour of being the performer instead of the devastated father. Listen carefully to what happens at 8 p.m. 4.5 hours after the crash, though Dean doesn't know it yet. Dean walks on stage. Spotlight hits him like a physical thing, warm and blinding. Audience erupts in whistles and applause. He smiles that lazy smile, the one that made him famous, the one that says nothing in the world could ever touch him. He raises his glass, always a prop, though tonight part of him wishes it were real, and launches into his opening number. The crowd loves it. They always do. Dean Martin could sing the phone book and make it sound like poetry. He's performed this show 1,000 times. He knows every word, every pause, every laugh line, every breath. Everybody Loves Somebody is the third song, a classic, one he's sung 10,000 times in Vegas showrooms and television studios and concert halls around the world. The orchestra starts the familiar intro. Dean closes his eyes for just a moment, lets the music wash over him like it always does, and when he opens them again, he's smiling, genuinely smiling, because for just this moment, standing in that spotlight with that melody surrounding him, Dean Martin feels happy. He doesn't know his son is dead, doesn't know his world ended 4 hours ago on a mountainside 300 miles away. For one more moment, he's just a performer doing what he loves, and Dean Paul is somewhere safe, and tomorrow they'll talk on the phone like they always do. Fifth verse, third note, the word somebody glides smooth. 5,000 people hold their breath and wait, because that's when Dean's eyes catch movement at stage left. A shadow. The stage manager, standing in the wings, visible, breaking protocol. Dean's voice cracks. Half a second. The orchestra keeps going, but Dean starts stopping. His eyes lock onto the stage manager. The man stands there, not moving, not gesturing, just standing. And his face. Notice what Dean sees. Jaw tight, eyes red, hands clasped like he's at a funeral. Before a word is spoken, Dean Martin knows. Doesn't know details, doesn't know it's Dean Paul, but he knows something catastrophic happened. The kind of terrible that puts a stage manager on stage during a live show. The stage manager shakes his head, twice, slow, tiny movement, but Dean sees it, and Dean Martin's face transforms. Every defense stripped away. That woman in the front row later tells reporters, it looked like his soul left his body, like someone reached inside and turned off a light. 3 seconds. From Dean Martin, king of cool, to Dean, a man whose worst fear just came true. Remember what happens next, because this is what people who were there never forgot. Dean doesn't run, doesn't shout, doesn't break down. He drops the microphone, doesn't throw it, doesn't slam it, just drops it like his fingers forgot how to hold things, and the metallic clang fills every corner of that room. Some people in the back rows jump at the sound. Others lean forward, confused. The orchestra stumbles to a halt, instruments trailing off one by one until there's only silence. Dean turns and walks, slowly, deliberately, measuredly, one foot in front of the other, one step, one breath, one movement at a time, like a man walking to his own execution, knowing what's waiting but unable to stop moving toward it. The audience thinks it's part of the act. Some laugh nervously, unsure. Some clap, thinking this is vintage Dean Martin, walking off stage mid-song for comedic effect, setting up some big punchline. Classic Dean, they think. He'll be back in 30 seconds with a joke. But the people backstage see something different. They see a man whose legs are barely holding him up, knees threatening to buckle with every step. They see his hands shaking at his sides. They see him mouth the words, "What happened?" before the stage manager can even open his mouth, before anyone has said a single word. The stage manager takes Dean to a small dressing room, closes the door. The sounds of the confused audience filter through the walls, muffled and distant. Someone out there is making an announcement. Technical difficulty. The show will resume shortly. Dean doesn't hear any of it. He stands in the middle of the room, still in his tuxedo, stage lights still hot on the fabric, stage makeup still perfect on his face, and looks at the stage manager with an expression that begs, actually begs, for this to be anything other than what he already knows it is. Please let it be money. Let it be a scandal. Let it be anything but this. The stage manager's voice cracks when he says 3 words. Dean Paul's gone. Dean doesn't ask how, doesn't ask where, doesn't ask when, doesn't ask if they're sure, if there's been a mistake, if maybe it's someone else. He just nods. Once. A tiny dip of his head, barely perceptible, and sits down in the chair facing the mirror. For 10 minutes, people outside timed it, watching the second hand crawl around the clock. He doesn't move, doesn't speak, doesn't cry, just stares at his own reflection. The stage makeup carefully applied 2 hours ago. The hair slicked back the way it always is. The tuxedo pressed and perfect. And he wonders how he's supposed to keep existing in a world where his son doesn't. How does a heart keep beating when it has no reason to? How do lungs keep pulling air when that air feels like ground glass? People knock. Manager, band leader, doctor. Dean ignores them, finally stands, walks to the mirror, looks at himself, really looks. 70-year-old man, lines around eyes, gray hair, face that smiled for cameras 4 decades. That's when he breaks. Not loud, not dramatic. Puts his hands on the sink, drops his head, shoulders shake silently. Even in private devastation, Dean Martin performs control, because he doesn't know how to be anything else. Next 48 hours become legendary. Dean refuses to cancel remaining shows, refuses to go home, refuses to talk, shows up to the next venue, walks on stage, performs. But something's different. Voice same, movement same. But the light behind his eyes? Gone. Extinguished. One audience member says it's like watching a ghost sing. Another says Dean looks right through them. Dean Paul's body is recovered March 23rd. Dean doesn't go to the site, can't see where his son died. Images in his mind already unbearable. He locks himself in a hotel room and drinks. Not playful Rat Pack drinking. This is different. A man trying to erase himself. Listen closely. This is where Dean Martin's story really ends. He performs a few more years, but everyone knows the truth. Dean Martin died on that mountainside with his son. Career limps along, shows up, sings hits, collects check, leaves. No banner, no jokes, no warmth. Man who made crowds feel like best friends now treats them like strangers. In 1988, less than a year after Dean Paul's death, Dean announces retirement. No interviews, no farewell tour, just stops. Final years at home, alone, playing golf badly, watching old movies, friends visit. He turns them away. His surviving children try to help. He smiles sadly. I'm fine. But he's not. He's waiting to join his son. In conversations mentions Dean Paul constantly, past tense, always. Dino would have loved this weather. Dino used to make me laugh. Dean Martin dies. Christmas Day 1995. 78 years old. Official cause, acute respiratory failure. Real cause, broken heart. 8 years, 8 months, 4 days after losing Dean Paul, Dean lets go. Remember this. Dean Martin made millions happy. King of cool, golden voice, easy charm, but beneath it all, just a father. When his son died, the father won. Performer couldn't save him. Charm couldn't protect him. Fame meant nothing. Dean Martin was a man who loved his son more than anything and couldn't survive losing him. That night in March 1987, when Dean walked off stage mid-song, he wasn't just leaving a performance. He was leaving the man he used to be. The microphone hit the floor. Metallic clang echoed. Somewhere in that sound was the end of an era. Audience applauded, confused, entertained, completely unaware they'd witnessed the moment Dean Martin's heart stopped beating, even though it took 8 more years for his body to realize it.